So here we go. Welcome to this webinar about how to stick to learning German, which is a very important topic for those that might have already realized that this is not a sprint, but rather a marathon. And a marathon doesn't run itself. It requires quite some preparation and practice. So let me share my wisdom with you that I've gathered over the last 30 years. And here is the schedule for today. If I'm fast, it's half an hour, but I might take a breath in between, so 40 minutes, and then we have 20 to 30 minutes Q&A. I'm also not bound to the hour. We can also talk longer, so no stress. Just to give you an idea why this topic matters, we need to answer this question: how long it actually takes to learn German. By the way, should you have any questions during the presentation, just type them somewhere on your computer and collect them for later, because I will not see your comments right now. And I will then respond to them. Yeah. So you can make a guess. How long do you think it takes to learn German? And by learning German, I mean until you feel comfortable in it. So just give you 10 seconds to just see what you think the answer is to this. So here's what I found. And just for those that don't know me yet, I've been teaching German since roughly 20 years, a bit more. And I've been learning languages since I'm 20 years old or 18 years old. So what I found here is pretty much aligned with my experience. So the FSI, or German language schools, have determined that until level B2, for some people C1, which is the level I've been talking about, you need to invest 750 to 900 hours of lifetime. 750 is rather on the optimistic end, because the FSI is the Foreign Services Institute of the US, so they train highly skilled, highly educated diplomats and people in diplomatic services. And you might not belong to that kind of intellectual elite. Yeah, don't worry, that doesn't mean you're stupid, but these are really highly trained people, and if you haven't received that training, you're likely on the higher end of 900 hours. And it's possible to get to C1 in 900 hours, but B2 is the level you are actually aiming for. And in intensive classes, students sit 3 hours a day, and theoretically they invest another 90 minutes of homework, but they have the weekends off, and for them, it takes roughly a year. Yeah, it's a rough estimate, so don't worry about it. And some people of you, or some of you, simply don't have 3 hours a day. They have other obligations to take care of. Yeah, maybe you have to earn money or take care of someone. Let's say you have 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, and a very simply calculation gives 3 years as a result. But that's really only if things go really smoothly, if you are a continuous, reliable learner, which most learners are not. And again, this is not a criticism, this is just life and being a human. And it's more likely that you will spend actually 5 years until you feel comfortable with your learning, with your German language skills. Yeah. And as you can see, that's quite a distance to cross, and you will simply face certain challenges on the way, which we will take a look at. Now, there might be some smart learners that say, oh, come on, 900 hours, let's do the math. I invest 6 hours a day. I get it done in 6 months. Or let's say I really push through 12 hours a day, 3 months. Weekends are for people that are lazy. So if I push it, I could get to that level in 2 months. Well, unfortunately, it's not that easy, because your learning process is anything but linear. Yeah, there is no human being that has such a learning curve. This is what we wish for. It rather looks like this. Yeah, it's a lot of back and forth and circling, and this is the optimistic curve. Very often it goes maybe further back or lower, and then it takes longer. So the learning process is one that is very volatile, to say the least. But there's a bit of hope for anyone with the right approach, and a little bit of support. You can actually get there with some enjoyment as well. There's people that run a marathon are not forced to do so, right? So hopefully you're not forced to learn German. Yeah. By the way, Kay, if there's any issue, write me a WhatsApp, please. Yeah. So while you run this marathon of learning German, and even if it's only a year is a long time. No? Thank you. You might face a couple of problems. One problem is that maybe at one point there is a lack of progress, or you wish it would go faster. You might encounter frustration over anything, basically. It might be an exercise you don't get, a grammar lesson that you struggle with. It could be frustration in another area of your life, which of course then influences your German learning process. You might feel overwhelmed by the amount of information, which is absolutely natural because it is overwhelming. Or you feel bored because you're maybe in the wrong level, or you have repeated a class again, even though you shouldn't have. You might at one point feel a lack of motivation and not really know how to tackle that because you don't know where it comes from. And it's motivation is a tricky topic. I'll talk about it a bit later. And all these things might also interact with each other. So sometimes the lack of progress might lead to frustration, might lead to lack of motivation, and then your progress suffers more and more. So it's time, or it's best to interrupt this cycle as soon as possible. Here's another thing for many, many learners is the budget, because I get plenty of emails that ask for a discount. You have to consider that normally you pay $250 per month in a language school, in the cheapest language school in Germany, which is the Volkshochschule, and there's other that are as cheap. But even in India, you pay $100 a month, and so you end up with $200 for a month, and it takes 2 months for a level. So you do the math, you actually end up with $3,000 a year if you learn in a language school or in a comparable institution. And that language school could be virtual, like online or offline. And if you count the 750 hours, thinking positively here, and if you only made $10 minimum wage, you would still miss out on $7,500 missed income. So keep this in mind. Language learning is a costly hobby. Yeah? Real English learning. And if you stretch it over 5 years, you will not take intensive classes for that whole time. So let's say it's 6K. I'm not sure what you do with 6K. Otherwise, I would invest it in language learning because it's a good investment, right? Another problem that everyone has to struggle with is life. Yeah, life has its challenges, and it really doesn't care what your plans are. It sometimes just throws things at you that require our immediate and ongoing attention. So let's take a look at that later. There's a good workaround for that.